What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and today we're talking about Resident Evil because a very strange leak came out last night that I feel like people are not quite sure what to deal with it. I mean, the last couple years for Resident Evil have been fantastic. RE7, RE8, obviously Village was fun, but so have been the Resident Evil remakes. 2, 3, and 4 have been absolutely perfect recreations and evolutions of old school Resident Evil, but now a lot of fans, including myself, are curious what comes next. After the incredible history they have established with Resident Evil, how do you go forward from here? Well, this leak kind of establishes that we're going back to the past. And I think some people are going to be a bit confused or a bit upset by it. But let's discuss. Hi, I hope you're having a great day. If you could, give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, first and foremost, let me talk about why I think this leak is valid, why I think it's worth reporting upon. So this is the people over at BIOHAZARD Declassified. I've actually covered a lot of their leaks over the course of these last few years because these people have very strange secret sources that actually broke them news about the fact that they were the people that sort of leaked the fact that Resident Evil Village was going to have vampires and werewolves. These people actually leaked a ton of details about Resident Evil 4 Remake before anybody else on the planet, and so now they're claiming the next game is Resident Evil 1 Remake. What the heck? Now, they have done additional leaks about next game is maybe going to be Resident Evil 9 Apocalypse, and I did talk about that, but today I want to go into this leak because they got sent a anonymous email that goes bit by bit through these bullet points addressing a very different style of Resident Evil 1 Remake. Now, I think the reason that some people are going to be upset by this is, to be honest, we already had a Resident Evil 1 remake. I mean, RE1 has actually taken a lot of different forms. There was original RE1, there was the special director's cut with some additional stuff. Then, of course, we got Resident Evil Remake, we got Resident Evil Dead Silence. I mean, there have been multiple versions of the original Resident Evil, but also people do kind of reference the fact that we got Resident Evil 1 Remake back in 2002, and it's been ported multiple times. And I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it's still fantastic. The original RE1 Remake still has spooky puzzles, great monster design, incredibly good lighting, still has cool fixed camera angles and stuff, but apparently to Capcom, this isn't enough. Capcom wants to bring it more in line with the Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 remake, making it more of an over-the-shoulder shooter with lots of action-y moments, and it sounds like some pretty substantial changes to the core DNA of Resident Evil. But let's go through this. So the current title is supposed to be Biohazard RE1. Now, of course, hardcore fans already know this, but in Japan, the name of Resident Evil has always been Resident Evil has always been called Biohazard in Japan, but there have been discussions ever since Resident Evil 7 came out that they want to try and find a way to unify the branding. Apparently, it seems like Capcom doesn't like the fact that this is one of those game series with such a different English name in Japan versus in America. They want all of it to be considered Resident Evil Biohazard. So this being called Biohazard RE1, that's a pretty interesting name. This is going to be slower paced than the original RE2 remake. So this to me is the part I feel like I am personally so excited about. The original versions of RE1, the one we got on PS1 and GameCube, it is definitely a slower paced game. It's more puzzle focused. It's more about trying to find monsters. I mean, in general, there's not even that many beasties. Like, there are zombies to kill and stuff, but it is more about the environment, the creepiness, the long shadows and crazy encounters, and not about where RE2 Remake and RE3 Remake, I love those games, but you're running through Raccoon City, you got grenade launchers and machine guns, and you're trying to kill, Nemesis and Mr. X and stuff like that. I love those games, but I have been curious, and I've actually talked a lot about this in videos, how you would take Resident Evil 2 Remake's DNA and apply that back to RE1. That level of graphics and detail, but with the very purposeful pacing of RE1. Now, apparently, one of the things they want to do is make it so that each and every zombie will have their own unique model due to the small number of enemies within the game. So yeah, like I just said, the original Resident Evil did not have hordes of zombies. There wasn't screens full of the crawling dead. It was much more methodical. I mean, it feels like the entire game had less than 100 zombies. So giving each of them a different outfit, clothes, face models, haircuts, that definitely seems feasibly possible, and I do think, while it's something the casual gamer won't notice, I think that's the kind of stuff that almost subconsciously will help add to the fear. There's going to be more bullets required to take out RE1 zombies than RE2 Remake, quoted as bullet sponges. Now, hopefully, this is within reason. A lot of the older Resident Evils, sometimes people would call it save one bullet horror, especially like the original RE2. You would run out of ammo. If you tried to kill everything, you would straight up run out of bullets. It was not possible to just kill everything unless you were good at aiming and were really scrounging to find every piece of hidden ammo. So, the idea of them trying to revert current day Resident Evil back to that, personally, I'm extremely excited to see how that actually works out, because the thought of shooting a zombie in the head over and over and over again and they don't instantly die, obviously it's not super exciting, but if it's done right, if it actually feels scary, like every fight matters, I do think that could actually really add to the fear of it. Now, here's something that some people are kind of happy about and sad about, which is Crimson Heads are apparently coming back. So in the Resident Evil 1 remake, they introduced this new system where you had to burn bodies. If you killed a zombie, it would actually stay on the floor, and if you left it there for like a couple hours, it would evolve into a Crimson Head, which is like a super zombie that can run, it can instant kill you. They're very, very terrifying. So the burning body system was great, but it created an extra secondary resource of like, okay, I'm having to count my shots, count my heals, count my defensive abilities, but also keep track of how much lighter fluid I have left. It was a system that I liked and a lot of people liked, but I do think more casual audiences were a bit put off by how hard the game could be if you weren't paying close attention. Now, here's what perhaps I am the most intrigued by. RE1 Lore will be explored further. So, the story in Resident Evil has always been something I've personally enjoyed a lot. The fact that it's got crazy underground labs and fake history books and science documents about how zombies exist, it's cringe and cheese, but I like that cringe and cheese. In fact, I've gone so far as to track down all the weird extra Resident Evil media, the books, the freaking manga, the comic, and what's interesting is that all of these have slightly different lore. They actually show fights and conversations and, minorly altered ways. So I have always been curious, if they went back and did stuff to remake these games, how would they rebuild that lore? Could they flesh it out? Could they change some conversations or add some extra world-building elements? When they originally made Resident Evil 1, obviously they didn't intend for it to become this giant franchise. There were little tidbits here and there that were supposed to be like cool little hooks, but you could tell that there was a lot of the original trilogy, especially of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, where they were making it up as they went along. And I think that's part of why it's so charming. It does have that real group of friends making up a cool story as they go. But going back, now they have to try and make it fit. They have to try and figure out how to connect the dots to this grander scope that they've retroactively created. I'm curious to see what the RE1 lore will look like in a full-blown remake. A different third-person camera will be used, slower pacing again, okay, so I'm down for that. A different third-person camera, that's so interesting. So maybe not an over-the-shoulder shooter, or not over-the-shoulder in the typical sense we've been getting. No more pre-rendered backgrounds, that makes sense. Each room will load up background assets, and the rest of the assets will load when doors are opened. This is to improve visuals and lighting. Now, obviously, the original Resident Evil games had like those dramatic door opening sequences, which are to hide load screens. So now I guess they're trying to find ways to make it where it's close to the original in vibe and pacing, while also kind of being scarier and spookier and not breaking up the action for modern audiences. I'll be honest, this sounds fantastic. Crimson Heads are back. Yeah, people are not happy about the Crimson Heads, but Resident Evil 2 Remake zombies were already sponges. Ooh, let's take a look at this. I'm really torn about this. On the one hand, the modern RE Remake model applying back to RE1 would be sick, but on the other hand, RE Remake is already the absolute perfect version of that game. Doing it again, but without the fixed camera and pre-rendered backgrounds, seems quite counter to the game's style. Look at this tweet here. As a new RE fan, the Resident Evil Remake is pretty much unplayable. Unintuitive puzzles, awful movement, clunky shooting mechanics, and those god-awful door animations. These things don't add to the style, they just make the experience overly frustrating. That is 26 likes. I think this person here is a huge reason why I feel like we're getting an RE1 Remake. Now, I have said this here and there, but I do wish more than anything that we were getting Resident Evil Code Veronica. You know, of course, Resident Evil Code Veronica Remake, I think, would be so interesting because Resident Evil Code Veronica is a very controversial entry. People say it has too much backtracking, too much fluff, too much ridiculous anime-style cutscenes, but I definitely think that doing a full-blown repaint reconstruction of RE Code Veronica would be incredibly cool because it has an opportunity to be so different, but my secondary choice, that's of course my first pick, but right beneath it, going back to the original sounds incredibly freaking cool. We'll see how it turns out, but at this point, I'll be honest, I'm 11 out of 10 excited. This sounds perfect. But what do you guys think? Are you excited for the Resident Evil 1 remake, or does this seem like an unneeded, unnecessary retread? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.